Welcome to part 2 of my Unmade Godzilla series. In the first part of this series we looked at Godzilla's Showa era, but this time we're going to be looking at the films Toho tried to make to revive the character, but didn't exactly go so well. So welcome to part 2, Godzilla-less. Now, Toho had a pretty big problem on their hands. Terror of MechaGodzilla failed to bring in as much money and was the lowest grossing Godzilla film to date. Throughout the rest of the 70s, all the way to 1983, many different people had many different ideas on how to either end the series for good, continue from where Terror of MechaGodzilla left off, reboot the timeline, or just start completely from scratch. Personally, as much as I loved Terror of MechaGodzilla, I'm happy where the series ended up with the Heisei era, but it is still cool to see what could have been, and laugh a lot at what almost was. Now, I will start off by saying SOS Japan Godzilla's suicide strategy may not even exist. It was mentioned extremely briefly as a concept on one of the old creators' blogs, and the only other bits of information being on the Japanese Wikipedia articles for Bagan and a new monster called Chameleon. Not much else is known about the project except for those two monsters and the fact that they were involved, and Godzilla was apparently going to be killed off by the end of the movie, but it's still not got much information, which is why I'm kind of skipping past it, and even the title sounds a little bit too made up, even for a franchise which has the full title for GMK. Another little thing I want to mention is, even though it's not Godzilla related, I have to mention Nessie, which would have been a film made by both Toho and Hammer Films. You know, Hammer Horror, the British company who made the amazing Dracula series, and it was going to focus on the Loch Ness Monster. Why the fuck was this not made? This is exactly what I want for a British kaiju movie. But didn't get made, was very early in development, and just got scrapped because the two studios couldn't work together, essentially. Now, Rebirth of Godzilla was essentially going to be a direct remake of the original 1954 movie. Apparently it was also going to have an Americanized version as well, similar to Godzilla King of the Monsters from 1956, but not much else is known except it was going to be a massive reboot for the series and remind audiences why Godzilla was such a huge property to begin with. Literally nothing else is known apart from it was going to be in colour, was going to be a very close remake, but that's it because the project did fall through sadly, which is a shame because I have some very big personal issues with the original film for its plot and all that kind of stuff, and seeing an updated version from the 70s would have been really good to flesh out the characters better and flesh out the overall storyline. This film would have been a direct sequel to Terror of MechaGodzilla and War of the Gargantuans, with Godzilla battling against a new Gargantua which may or may not have resembled the Devil. Very little apart from this is known, except the title may have been Godzilla vs. the Devil, but this has been denied by Toho, leading to a lot of uncertainty about the film even existing at all. Although in past they have acknowledged it, as well as other people have acknowledged that this film did exist at some point, but from the sounds of it, it was very early stages and no one really wanted to make it, so it ended up just falling into obscurity. By the end of the 70s, we reach the most cocaine-fueled era of Godzilla concepts, starting with God's Godzilla, which, yes, God's Godzilla. Jesus is the main protagonist, and Godzilla is Jesus' puppet to bring forth the rapture during World War III in the 80s. Not much else is known about the project, even who even created it, but apparently it does exist. There's quite a few sources to this one, and in all honesty this is a situation where I'm actually glad this wasn't made, but at the same time, oh my god, I'm so sad I did not get to see this at some point in my life, because it's so fucking stupid. I have to love it. Up next was Godzilla vs. the Osaka Fortress, which was apparently going to be set out to destroy all monsters. Basically the film would have involved Godzilla being sedated and ended up battling against the Osaka Fortress, which was essentially just a giant mech which went insane and began massacring cities, even apparently killing the Prime Minister. Godzilla woke up and battled the mech with the help of some humans, and they ended up destroying it. The plot does sound pretty damn good for a Godzilla film, with the film concept apparently being reused later on for another concept, Godzilla vs. the Robot Army, which I'll get into with the third part of this video. But One of the reasons why this was apparently cancelled is highly due to budgetary things. Apparently the film was going to be one of the most expensive Godzilla films to date, so Toho, after seeing the massive flop that was Terror of MechaGodzilla, really didn't feel like throwing a ton of money at a project which most likely would not have made much back. Finally, we reach the granddaddy of all Unmade Godzilla movies, a Space Godzilla. Now, there is tons about this movie online, as the plot was released as a magazine with Toho's consent. There are translations across the internet, so if you do want to read the full thing, I highly encourage it, because it's a lot of fun. But, yeah, essentially this whole time, since Godzilla raids again, Godzilla has been a pregnant female, who is also an alien from the planet Godzilla. Godzilla's actual name is Roseanne, and we've been calling it Godzilla this whole time to represent its Godzillian race. She has to get back to her home planet because she's dying from diabetes, so some scientists turn her, yes her, into a rocket ship to fly home to her husband. She reaches the planet where a bunch of aliens whose leader is called Gamorni, or Gamora, which look a lot like turtles but definitely has no relation to Gamera, and our Godzilla dies, and not Gamera dies too. The end. Now, this movie is really fucking weird, and I don't think I'm ever going to insult Godzilla vs. Megalon ever again, but it sounds so much fun and so stupid. I really wish it was made, but at the same time, it's pretty obvious that if this film was made, it would have been a desperate attempt to rejuvenise the Godzilla formula, and the films we get now would have so many changes compared to what they ended up becoming that they'd be basically unrecognisable. Or, very simply, this movie would have killed the brand that badly, no one was going to touch it ever again. So, I'm very glad this was cancelled, but at the same time, Toho nearly made it. The script was fully finished, and they only cancelled the film because they didn't want Godzilla's origins to be extraterrestrial. That is it. That is their only reason for cancelling this movie. That's how close we were. Thank fucking God for them not wanting him to be an alien. Reaching the 1980s, we get a really heartbreaking loss for die-hard Godzilla fans with Resurrection of Godzilla. It does follow some very similar plot points to what eventually became The Return of Godzilla, something that is also important for the next few entries, but the film had one major difference, and that's Bagan. Now, there was a different pronunciation for the character back then, but I'm just going to call him Bagan because it's easier, and Bagan was essentially a shape-shifting kaiju, which was meant to become Godzilla's ultimate enemy, beating out King Ghidorah, but still to this day has not made a single film appearance for one reason or another. Now, most of the plot revolves around a new Godzilla being woken up by illegal nuclear dumping, whilst Bagan attacks Japan. The monsters battle, Bagan dies, then essentially the Return of Godzilla's ending happens, but with a twist. Godzilla falls into the sea, not a volcano, and later emerges in the US to set up another film. Technically speaking, this film was made as The Return of Godzilla was made, but after the amount of revisions, if you've seen that movie, there's some huge differences with this. To starters, it's not clear in this version if this Godzilla was meant to be the Godzilla from the 1950s, brought back to life, if it was meant to be a direct sequel to Terror of MechaGodzilla, any of that stuff, whilst the film we ended up getting was a complete reboot apart from the original film, with a brand new second Godzilla replacing the Godzilla from Raids Again all the way to Terror. This film's not too clear on that, but this concept is so good just because Bagan's in it, and I'm so sad it wasn't made. Speaking of Americanized Godzillas, Godzilla King of the Monsters 3D was going to be a very, very loose remake of Godzilla King of the Monsters from 1956, according to some places. Whilst personally I think it was most likely going to be a new Godzilla film that took elements of that film. Little is known about the plot itself, except that it would have been unrelated to the other 15 movies, and the film was conceived by Steve Miner of Friday the 13th Part 2 fame, which, you know, he's done some good work in my opinion, as the first American Godzilla film. And it was going to be set in San Francisco, quite similar to Godzilla 2014. Godzilla was going to be stop motion and animatronic throughout the film instead of Summation, who looked a lot closer to a T-Rex than past incarnations of the character, but the film was scrapped after studios didn't want to spend, and I'm not joking here, $30 million on a kids movie. You know, just looking at Frozen 2, like, costing 200 mil, 30 mil, Jesus Christ. Toho's own Return of Godzilla ended up sealing the film's fate to be cancelled, but apparently bits of the film did influence the original version of TriStar's Godzilla, but that also ended up being scrapped, as I'm going to cover in part 4. The group also wanted to produce a new Rodan movie, but that also ended up being scrapped for the same kind of reasons. No one wanted to spend that much money on a kaiju kids film, and the project just didn't end up going anywhere, which is a shame, but at the same time maybe a blessing, since this Godzilla did look really, really like a T-Rex. Now finally, to end off this video, the second version of Resurrection of Godzilla was kind of a small re-edit of the original script. This time, there's a new form for Bagan, which is much more satanic, and officially given the character that name. The script was liked enough for Toho once again, and they really enjoyed it, but they decided to revise it and turn it into Return of Godzilla for next year, kicking off the Heisei era of films. Now apparently this was done due to budgetary stuff. By having so many different forms of Bagan, they had to construct so many different suits, figure out ways to change between the suits without it seeming too jarring, and eventually Toho just couldn't really be bothered to do all that, and a simple fact that it cost a lot of money, with a lot of money being lost with Terror of MechaGodzilla, the last film for them, they didn't want to spend so much on a risk, so they ended up doing a much more simple idea with Return of Godzilla, which, honestly, is a film I love, so I'm quite glad that that ended up being as good as it was. Thank you very much for watching. If you did enjoy this, please be sure to like and subscribe. Hey, I did a part 2. Are you all proud of me? So, yeah, this first video went down so well, and I'm really happy with it. I didn't expect it to get even as close to as successful as it ended up doing. It's my most successful video since I rebooted, which is why I'm doing part 2 so quickly. So, yeah, just honestly thank you to everyone for the support. I've seen some really nice comments, something I rarely ever see comments with my videos, so thank you for that. And I shall hopefully see you next week for part 3 covering the Heisei era, which, oh, that is going to be the longest video in this because Toho really didn't know what they wanted to do with that era, and it sucks because Heisei is so good. So I will see you next time, and have an amazing week. Bye for now.